Listen up. The views, thoughts, and opinions expressed in this podcast belong solely to the podcast participants, and not to any participant's employer, organization, committee, or other group or individual. This podcast is for entertainment purposes only. You know, for fun. So lighten up and enjoy. Oh yeah, the disclaimer has been disclaimed. We've said it all. We've covered our bases. We've protected ourselves with a disclaimer. You say? We gotta have a disclaimer, you say? Well, hello everyone. My name is Sawtooth Frank. You're listening to the Soft Serve podcast. And on this episode, I am going to be talking to you about the phenomenon of shadow people and answering the question, are shadow people real? And we will jump right into that right after the intro music.
The Soft Serve Podcast.
You're a loser, a scumbag, lower than scum. You are a absolute zero. Absolute zero. Lower than scum. A scumbag. Absolute zero.
Oh yeah, baby. Absolute zero. Yeah. Let's bring it down. Yeah. That's right. You know who's not a scumbag or an absolute zero? Shadow people. Yeah, that's what we're gonna be talking about. Shadow people. Yeah. They haunt you. They creep on you. They scare you. Yeah. Shadow people. Oh yeah, baby. Shadow people. Oh yeah. Okay. Yeah. Well, if you skipped ahead of the disclaimer and the intro music, you are listening to the Absolute Zero podcast version of the Soft Serve podcast. And it's an absolute zero version of the podcast because it's just me, Sawtooth Frank, your host. It used to be called the Soft Serve podcast when I had a regular co-host, one Stomping Jen.
I don't want to be an immortal lobster.
We all miss her, but I have received some information that, and this is an announcement, I believe, so hold on to your hats, sit down. I believe Stomping Jen will not be returning to the podcast on a permanent basis.
I don't want to be an immortal lobster.
Hey, look, before you get your knickers in a twist, as they say, to each their own. I feel like Stomping Jen has moved on. She sees the podcast as my creative endeavor. And you know what? She's not wrong. I have always been the creative force behind the Soft Serve podcast, the Absolute Zero podcast, whatever you want to call it. I've always been the driving entity behind it all. So, you know, she's not wrong. It has always been my thing. It is my thing to the extent that we continue doing it. So, but I may be able to convince her to come back once in a while to be a guest, to sit down with me on rare occasion. But that does open up new possibilities, I think, having some...
I don't want to be an immortal lobster.
Definite answers about whether or not she ever intends to come back permanently. I think that opens up the possibility for me to move forward thinking about new stuff to do with the show. New guest hosts, a new permanent host, I don't know. New permanent guest host, who knows? Really, the possibilities are kind of endless, and I'm going to be thinking about some stuff in relation to the show. For example, should I rebrand it? Should I retitle the podcast the Absolute Zero Podcast? Some of you may not know, I used to have a comic strip a long time ago called Absolute Zero. And like 20 years ago, I thought about doing a Absolute Zero podcast. It ended up turning into the Soft Serve podcast, but I don't know. But then would branding change anything? Would rebranding change anything? I don't think so. I'd be interested, those of you who listen to the show, to let me know what you think about that. Again, I don't really care. Like, I don't want to invest any more money. That's the thing. Well, that's not true. I don't want to invest any more money in branding or rebranding. You know, because I don't care that much. So I probably will just keep it the Soft Serve podcast, honestly. But I may redo a bunch of stuff. I may redo the disclaimer. I may redo the intro music. I may reload some of my sound effects and do them a little bit differently. We'll see. So I'm going to be fucking around with all of that. But before I fuck around with all of that, I do need to buy a new mixer. Now, about a year and a half, 2 years into doing this podcast, I purchased this device called a Rodecaster, and it was the first version of the Rodecaster software. And it's like 6 years old now, and they are deprecating it. And they have said that with the next operating system update for my computer, the app that sort of helps me configure the device is no longer going to work. So I think I'm going to buy a new mixer. I might even buy it tonight because it's on sale through Amazon Prime Day. It's 20% off. So I think I'm going to get the Rodecaster Duo. And it only has 2 microphone inputs, which is fine. I think in the entire history of the podcast, we've only ever done like 4 shows where we used more than 2 microphones. So, you know, I've given up any sort of illusions that I'm going to have people coming here regularly to do the podcast, because that would mean they'd have to come to my house. And I don't want fucking people here in my house. Fuck you. Don't come to my house. You're not going to be on the show. So, if you're going to be on the Soft Serve podcast, it's going to be by Zoom. No in-person recording for guests. Even if I get a new host, it might be by Zoom. But that would mean you have to have good equipment, because I'm not going to deal with somebody who sounds like shit. My stuff sounds good. And I can't have somebody who is a occasional guest host or permanent co-host sound like shit. It can't happen. I'm not going backwards to the days where I was sitting at my kitchen table with a snowball mic. That's right. So I'll be getting a new mixer. I probably am never going to do a video podcast. We talked about this before. Nobody wants to look at me. I don't do anything on here that would require video. No one needs to see me. You got it? Okay. Well, on the show today, we're going to fucking talk about shadow people. That's what I have planned for you. Shadow people. So let's jump right into it, okay? I can already tell you that this episode is not going to be 30 minutes long because I just spent 10 minutes yapping, blabbing, squawking, chirping at you. So just sit down, get comfortable, because we're going to talk about shadow people. So first, let's answer the fucking question. What are shadow people? What is it? It is a phenomenon, okay, where people see dark, human-shaped silhouettes that appear as these dense patches of shadow that move around purposely and with purpose. And it's a phenomenon that has been recorded as long as there has been recorded history, believe it or not. So these shadow people are a thing that human beings have been talking about and reporting for as long as we've been keeping history and writing shit down. Now, why am I interested in this, you want to ask? Why, Sawtooth Frank, are you doing a whole show on shadow people? Sit down. Okay? I want you to sit down. I'm interested in this because I have personally experienced the shadow people phenomenon. That's right. Sawtooth Frank, your podcast host, has experienced shadow people. I have seen shadow people. I have been menaced by shadow people. I have sensed their presence. But before we talk about that, let's dive a little more deeply into this whole phenomenon about shadow people, shall we? And as I go along and talk to you about shadow people, I will probably reference some of my own experiences and thoughts about them. And then at the end of this discussion, we're going to answer the question, are shadow people real? Are they a real thing? Okay? That's the plan. So let's dig into this. Let's dig into the historical background of shadow people. And I think a good place to start are what I'm going to call ancient accounts of shadow people, going all the way up to the 19th century, so before the 1900s started. Okay? So reports of shadow people, these dark humanoid shadow figures, stretch back for thousands of years, millennia. That's what they call thousands of years, millennia. And there are a number of ancient cultures that describe encounters with these shadow-like entities, or as I call them, shadow people. And, they're generally referred to now as shadow people. Whether they're people or not is a question that has yet to be answered. But, we first, I think, see the reference of shadow people in ancient Mesopotamian and Sumerian texts that reference dark spirits that lurked at the edges of human perception. And they called these things Udug-hul, or evil demons that could appear as dark shapes. So these were the Mesopotamians and the Sumerians. Ancient Islamic tradition also describes shadow people, and they call them jinn, which I believe is also the genesis of the mystical creature called a genie. You know that fucking thing that lives inside of a lamp and grants you wishes, the genie? Well, that's derived from the idea of a jinn, which is also really a shadow person entity. And jinn are described as manifesting to us human beings as shadowy, fleeting figures. Okay, and there's another thing in Islamic tradition called the Qarin, which is a personal spirit companion that ancient Islamic texts describe as also being shadow-like. We also see medieval European folklore featuring these things called shades. Not the fucking things on your windows, but dark spirits of the dead. And these are distinct from ghosts in the sense that these shades, they are not luminous and they aren't translucent. You can't see through them like ghosts. So a very different thing, but also reported in medieval European folklore. Let's see here. In the Americas, we have Native American traditions. Okay, across various Native American nations, also describing shadow-like beings. Sometimes they're characterized as being guardians. Sometimes they're described as being tricksters or even omens, right? Signs of things to come. So those are what we think about sort of as the ancient accounts. And one thing to talk about in relation to these ancient accounts is there's a connection to the description of these shadow-like beings with a phenomenon known as sleep paralysis. Now, curiously, I suffer from sleep paralysis. It's something that I have experienced throughout my life. And this is a condition where as you're waking up from sleep, right, your mind is awake, but your body is fully paralyzed. You can't move. And you sometimes sense the presence of beings in the room with you. It's really fucking freaky and horrible, and it's one of the scariest sensations I've ever experienced in my life. And Stomping Jen can attest to this if you have any doubts. But sleep paralysis, that's a real thing, and I've experienced it. But anyways, many of these ancient accounts and descriptions of shadow people are also connected to the sleep paralysis phenomenon. So, we see that for many centuries, these cultures that describe these encounters with dark, shadowy presences, these beings, these shadow people, they physically press on and paralyze a sleeping person. And some of these entities include the old hag, that's in Newfoundland folklore, the mare of Germanic tradition. I don't know what the fuck the mare is. I think that might be some kind of witch. And then the Kanashibari in Japan. I'd be honest with you, I don't know what the fuck a Kanashibari is, but all three of those things have been connected. Those shadowy like creatures have been connected to the idea of sleep paralysis. And and are often described as being a dark figure looming over the paralyzed person who is trying to wake up from sleep. And again, that's something I have experienced, as being totally paralyzed in my bed, trying to wake up, and then having a figure standing over me. It's fucking scary. I'm telling you. I hope you never experience it, my dear listener. I don't wish that on my worst enemy. But, so moving along from sort of ancient accounts of shadow people, we also see them in what I'm going to think of as the modern era, right? The 1900s to today. What is it? We're in the 2020s. Past the middle of the 2020s, if you can fucking believe that. 2026, as I sit here and record this. So, one of the things we see, though, in the modern era is that the idea of shadow people becomes solidified as a distinct paranormal category in the late 1900s. So that happened in the 1980s and 1990s, where we begin to see reports clustering online in the emerging internet, right? And I'm thinking about message boards, right? Before we had the internet as we know it today. And these reports allow these new platforms, right? So message boards, and then in the 90s, websites allowed people who were experiencing shadow people to begin to report and compare their accounts and start to notice patterns. And these patterns, again, we've talked about some of this, were these dark humanoid silhouettes. Again, that's where the idea of the shadow person came up. Seeing these beings out of sort of your peripheral vision, right? And then having this sense of being watched by these beings, with some of them having malevolent intent, right? So bad intentions. And we see early in the 2000s, in 2001 specifically, an author named Heidi Hollis credited with popularizing the term shadow people in her book called The Secret War, which framed these entities as a distinct paranormal phenomenon. Right? So thank you, Heidi Hollis, for defining this problem, this phenomenon of shadow people. And I say it's a problem because at various points in my life, it's been fucking terrifying for me to experience these things. Make no bones about it. If you experience shadow people, I hope you get a good shadow person. Mine have been scary, the ones I've seen. So, after Heidi Hollis published her book, The Secret War, a radio host who hosted a paranormal program called Coast to Coast AM, a guy named Art Bell, did a whole episode on shadow people. And he invited listeners to call in and share their experiences with shadow people. And surprisingly, and maybe not surprisingly, not surprisingly to me, the response was enormous. many people called in and reported their experiences with shadow people. And that radio show that Art Bell did is considered a pivotal moment in cementing the mythology of shadow people in the modern era. So after that show, in April 2001 on Coast to Coast, Art Bell and Heidi Hollis did several more shows and appeared together to talk about the phenomenon of shadow people, and they sort of launched it into the mainstream of paranormal discourse. Now, from that point, the 2000s to the present, shadow people have been a staple of paranormal investigation. They've appeared on television shows. They've been part of horror fiction. They've been part of internet creepypasta. And believe it or not, they have been the subject of sleep disorder research. And so, starting in the 2000s, shadow people have sort of existed in both the supernatural and scientific conversations. Right? We haven't talked about what these things are yet, right? Are they a paranormal phenomenon? Are they generated by the brain? Whatever the case, I mean, these shadow people seem to be experienced by people all over the place. And again, I can attest to you, I have experienced them, right? And so, what they are exactly, I have no fucking idea, right? But now we've had, in addition to supernatural hypotheses about their genesis, we now have people on the scientific side looking into them. So I think that's a good thing. So we've talked kind of obtusely about this, but let's talk a little bit more about the characteristics of shadow people, okay, that are reported by the people who experience them. And these characteristics have been assembled across thousands and thousands of accounts of these entities. Let me take a sip of seltzer before I jump into this, okay? That's refreshing. This is a polar seltzer Clementine Bramble. And we are not sponsored by Polar Seltzer, by the way. We don't have any sponsors on our show. I just happen to enjoy the fucking hell out of this stuff. All right, so let's get into the characteristics of shadow people. They generally appear as flat, 2D, or fully 3D dark silhouettes. They have no discernible facial features. They're often seen in peripheral vision and disappear when they look at them directly. They sometimes wear a hat. And this sounds a little silly, the Hat Man is a specific, widely reported subtype of the shadow person or shadow people. Or they sometimes wear a hooded cloak. They're associated with a feeling of dread, of being watched, or evil intent. And they are frequently reported during the edge of sleep, right? A state called hypnagogia, or during sleep paralysis. And they may dart, glide, or move unnaturally fast. Now, let me tell you, when I've seen these things, it is generally when I am either on the edge of sleep or I'm experiencing sleep paralysis. So we can check that one off the list. I have often seen them either in the hallway outside of my bedroom or coming into my bedroom from the hallway, and they usually appear to me to be these fully 3D dark silhouettes. So I see that as well. I have seen them to have no facial features. They are just literally these mobile, moving, black silhouetted people. So no facial features. I have not really experienced them in my peripheral vision. And I think I might have said that earlier, but if I did, I misspoke. I really don't think so now that I'm thinking about it a little more intentionally. And I haven't seen them disappear when I look at them. The one thing I have seen is when I look at them or notice them, right, they dart and move like incredibly fast at me. So I have observed them to dart, glide, or move unnaturally fast. And I've absolutely had a feeling of dread, or that they're watching me and that they do not have good intent. Yeah, so I have experienced almost all of these characteristics of these shadow people. So now that, and I gotta tell you, in the past 5 years or so, they've become less frequent. I think it's been at least 5 years since I've experienced them, but this is like one of those things that's very difficult to articulate and explain to another person. I think you really need to experience it to understand it, but I feel like I sound like I'm crazy when I try to tell people about it. And, you know, I've had people tell me they're just dreams or I'm asleep, but I really don't think so. These things have felt incredibly real to me. And I have to wonder what the fuck they are or where they come from. So that gets us into what are some of the proposed explanation for these shadowy fuckers. Okay, so I'm going to categorize these into sort of two buckets for us. We have the natural and scientific explanations, and then we have sort of what I'm going to call the paranormal or supernatural. So let's start with natural and scientific. Sleep paralysis, we talked about this, and being on the edge of sleep, right? So during the transition in and out of sleep, scientists claim the brain can generate incredibly vivid hallucinations while the body remains immobile, right? Or sort of in a state of sleep paralysis. Now, I've never experienced sleep paralysis going into sleep. I have experienced sleep paralysis coming out of sleep. And I have seen these shadow beings, these shadow people in both states. Just generally going into sleep, but not being sleep paralyzed. And then coming out of sleep while being in a state of sleep paralysis. So I see these motherfuckers all the time. Falling asleep, waking up, being paralyzed. It's not fun. Do you hear me? It is not fun. So, These these shadow people, they are the most commonly reported visions for people who are on the edge of sleep. We know that. We know that from survey data. All right, so there's another explanation for this called pareidolia, right? And that is our brain's tendency, hardwired into our gray matter, to look for patterns in things, especially faces and bodies, in things that maybe don't have rigidly defined shapes. So stuff like shadows, curtains, or dark corners. The pareidolia, I might be saying that word wrong, so don't fucking come after me, okay? The pareidolia explanation kind of says, when you're falling asleep or coming out of sleep, your brain just tries to make sense of the stuff in its environment and translates that into the shape of a person. So like a shadow on the floor or the wall, or your curtains, or, clothes hanging in the closet, right? That's pareidolia. Let's see, peripheral vision artifacts. We talked about this. And sort of the scientific explanation is that in your eye, you've heard of rod and cones, right? Well, the rods, right? The rods are these photoreceptors that primarily are located in the periphery of your eye, right? And they dominate peripheral vision. And they're very sensitive to motion, but bad at color and details. So they make your peripheral vision prone to misinterpreting shadows as figures. And I don't know about that, and I'm not sure I believe that. Let's see, another one is carbon monoxide poisoning. So this is another natural or scientific explanation. Some scientists think that low-level carbon monoxide exposure from stuff like faulty furnaces can cause hallucinations, paranoia, and even, we were talking about this before, that sense of a presence, like a ghost in the house effect. I call bullshit on that because I have carbon monoxide detectors all over my fucking house. And I feel like if carbon monoxide levels were at a rate or a level that they could be causing hallucinations, the carbon monoxide detectors would pick that up and would be going off. So I don't believe that, at least not in my case. Let's see, another scientific explanation is temporal lobe stimulation or epilepsy. There's a lot of like proto-sexual explanations. Rods like rods in your eye. Stimulation of your lobes. But anyways, temporal lobe stimulation or epilepsy. Okay, so when you have activity in the temporal lobe of your brain, right, whether it's from seizures, like from epilepsy or other causes, this can produce the sensation that there's a presence or even cause a hallucination of a shadowy figure. And there was this neuroscientist, this guy named Michael Persinger, who demonstrated that when you stimulate the temporal lobe in the brain with a magnet, people sensed a presence. Now, I'm not near any fucking magnets. I don't have epilepsy. and my temporal lobes not being stimulated. So I don't know. This wouldn't explain me seeing shadow people. That's for fucking sure. Let's see. Okay, another natural or scientific explanation is psychological effects or dissociation. So high stress, trauma, or dissociative episodes. And that's when you feel like you're disconnecting from yourself, can produce perceptual distortions, including shadow-like figures. Now, if you've listened to this podcast for a long time, you know that I have high stress. I have experienced psychological trauma in my life. I don't think I've ever experienced dissociated episodes, though. So maybe this one is causing me to see shadow figures, but I will say, at the points in my life where I was in the highest stress, so when I was a child and some other points in my life, I didn't see a single fucking shadow person. It wasn't until later in my life. Okay? So there you go. Oh my God, there's so many scientific explanations. All right, infrasound. Apparently low frequencies, okay, that are generated by wind or machinery can cause feelings of dread or unease in people, and in some cases can cause visual anomalies. Infrasound! You may believe it, but I don't. All right, get a load of this one. Boy, how do I even say this? Okay, exploding head syndrome and other parasomnias can cause shadow people, apparently. So, exploding head syndrome and other sleep disorders can produce vivid, often frightening sensory experiences during sleep transitions. I don't know about you, but I don't have fucking exploding head syndrome. My head is still here. It hasn't exploded. I don't think I've experienced that. And do I have other parasomnias? I don't know. Maybe. But I still don't think that this is what's caused my sightings of the shadow people. Let's see, medications and drug effects. So different substances like antihistamines, so like, that stuff you take for allergies, antidepressants, and certain recreational drugs, maybe like pot, mushrooms, or acid, can cause shadow-like visual hallucinations as known side effects. Now, I don't think I've been on any substances when I have seen shadow people. All right, this other natural or scientific explanation is called grief and bereavement hallucinations. So this says research shows that a significant percent of bereaved people report seeing or sensing the presence of deceased loved ones, sometimes as dark figures. Well, first of all, if any of my deceased loved ones are listening to this and you want to come back and visit me, don't come back as a fucking shadow person, okay? I mean, just your own ghosty self is going to be enough to cause me anxiety. You don't need to make it worse by transmuting into some kind of fucking dark entity. Please. I don't know about this, okay? Like everybody else in the world, I've lost people close to me. I've experienced grief and bereavement. I've been bereaved. And I've never had a single hallucination. Not one. So, That's it. That's the scientific or natural explanations for shadow people. I got to tell you, on the whole, I think it's a pretty weak case as an explanation for shadow people. I'm sorry. You can call me woo-woo. You can say I'm crazy. Say whatever you fucking want. I just don't think any of those things adequately explain this phenomenon. At least the way I've experienced it. And the way many people report experiencing it since millennia. All right, so let's get into some of the supernatural or paranormal explanation, okay? Ghosts or spirits. Now, this is the most common interpretation by regular people, that shadow people are the spirits of deceased humans, possibly by those whose energy is too weak to manifest fully. I don't buy that. I don't think shadow people are ghosts or spirits. You might. That's fine. I'm not trying to take anything away from you. But it doesn't add up to me. It doesn't add up. I've seen ghosts. I've seen an actual ghost. I've seen 2 ghosts in my life. Maybe I'll do an episode on ghosts next. But I saw the ghost of an old lady once, and I saw the ghost of a cat. And neither one of them were shadow beings. Okay, next type of thing that these shadow entities could be are demons. Now, many of our religious and paranormal conceptual frameworks, particularly Christianity, talk about demons, and they classify shadow people as demonic presences or oppressive spirits. This one, I'm giving some credence to. As I've said to you during this episode, my experience with these shadow people have not been good. I don't like them. They make me uncomfortable. I've had that sense of dread. I've had that feeling like they're going to hurt me. Especially when they dart suddenly and move quickly towards me. I don't like it. And often when I wake up from nightmares, I'm screaming about demons. Stomping Jen can attest to this. My kids can attest to this. Demons. I scream about demons. Another possible explanation is interdimensional beings. So there are theories that shadow people are beings from another dimension or adjacent reality, and they're briefly becoming visible when the veil between the dimensions gets too thin, or they're actually moving between dimensions. Again, I think this, I'm giving this one a... I like this one, too. Extraterrestrials. They could be extraterrestrials. So some UFO and, or UAP, as they're called now, and alien contact researchers have linked shadow people to non-human intelligences, particularly in cases involving surveillance or repeated visitation. Now, I've said to you, I have been repeatedly visited by shadow people, and I would like to believe that I am being observed by aliens. The other interesting thing is I have also had a UAP or UFO experience. And maybe I'll talk about that on a future episode too. We'll see. So this one also, I think, has some validity to it. Now, there's another theory called the stone tape theory. right? And this is, think about the stone tape theory as being like psychic residue, or places, physical places having memory, that locations themselves can record and replay emotional or energetic imprints upon them. And these might explain shadow figures being tied to specific places. Now, that doesn't explain to me, though, the malevolent intent of these things and why they rush at you and dart at you or loom over you. I feel like the psychic residue theory or the place memory theory, they would just be like going about their business. So I don't like this one. So some people now, we talked about how Christianity thinks about demons, right? The Judeo-Christian religions think about demons. There are some Eastern religion paranormal explanations, right? Called thought forms or tulpas, right? And these come out of Tibetan and Buddhist ideas that hypothesize that shadow people are psychic constructs generated by collective human belief and fear, and that they are sort of thought into existence. I think there's some validity to ideas about consciousness not being what we think it is, right? That the human brain generates consciousness, and maybe consciousness itself is something that exists outside of us. And maybe as if the mind is somehow just working with consciousness or processing an extant consciousness, maybe we can construct things within it. So this one's a maybe for me. And let's see, other explanations. Some people, we talked about this Hat Man before. Within the paranormal shadow person dialogue, some people think that the Hat Man is a specific singular entity, not just a kind of generic shadow person, and that the Hat Man is specifically attracted to trauma, is a death omen, or likes to feed on people's fear. I don't know about that. I told you, I never experienced the Hat Man, so I can't speak to that, but maybe, I don't know. And then, again, we're going to end with the jinn. Remember we talked about the jinn before when we were talking about sort of ancient manifestations of shadow people. So, I think within the Islamic community and within Islamic scholarship circles, they interpret these shadow figures as being manifestation of the jinn, which in Islamic theology are considered real beings. Now, I'm not one to say, again, I've seen these motherfuckers, these shadow people. I've experienced them. Are they jinn? I don't know. I have no idea. So, we've heard explanations about shadow people having scientific causes. We've heard some of the paranormal and supernatural explanations for shadow people. I think the one thing we can say with certainty is that the phenomenon of shadow people sits at this very compelling crossroads. right? So it's simultaneously, it's a genuine inquiry of neuroscientists, particularly in the sleep medicine space. And it's one of the most widely and consistently reported experiences in global paranormal culture. You know, whatever the origin, whatever the prevailing explanation, I do believe that the consistency of the reports across different cultures, across millennia, thousands of years, does make these shadow people one of the most intriguing puzzles in the study of human perception and experience. Alongside ghosts. Ghosts have been around forever too. But shadow people are different than ghosts. We just talked about that. And other things too that we talked about in this show. We don't have time to go into. Like UFOs, or UAP as they're called now. The nature of consciousness itself. Anyways. So, I'm going to answer the question now. Are shadow people real? And what I mean by that question is, are they entities? Unique entities? Do they exist outside of some naturalistic, biological trick of the brain, so to speak? Right? And I think the answer to that question is yes. I think that because of my own experiences, and I know this is merely anecdotal, and anecdotal experiences don't make scientific theory or law, but I have experienced these fucking things. I have been laying there in my bed at night, going to bed, drifting off, and then I see 1, 2, or 3 of these fucking things walking down the hallway outside of my bedroom door. And I've seen one walk by. Then I see another one, the middle one, pause, turn, take a couple of steps into my room. Notice I'm looking at it, and then dart suddenly at me. And then I sort of snap awake out of my hypnagogic state. And I can tell you, you know, when that happens, they just blink out of existence. Right? And are these things interdimensional? Are they demons? Are they, you know, external projections of UAP occupants? I don't know. But what I can tell you is the number of times I've experienced these things, they feel so incredibly real to me in ways that dreams are obviously not real to me. You know, like, your gut can tell you when something is real and even dangerous, right? I've been close to a bear. I've been close to a moose in the wild. And like, when you encounter those things, something happens inside of you, right? That tells you these aren't the fucking things you see on TV. These are dangerous, and these things have the capacity to end your life. They are real. And it's like that innate gut feeling I get about these shadow people when I've experienced them. And when I think about my experiences of them in hindsight, I believe they are real. So yes, think what you want of me. If you think I'm crazy, fuck you! You haven't experienced the shadow people. I have. And if you have experienced the shadow people and you still think they're not real, fuck you! Traitor. All right. So that's it for my talking to you about the shadow people, dear listener. Now, if you've stumbled across this podcast and you've experienced shadow people and you want to share your story with me, let me know. Maybe I'll bring you on as a guest. Send me an email about your experience and I will read it on the podcast. You can email me at softservepodcast@gmail.com. You can connect with me on Facebook, on Instagram, on Blue Sky, on Twitter, on TikTok. Okay, you can send me in a DM your account of a shadow person. And if you give me permission, I'll read it on the podcast. Okay? I really want to hear about your experiences so I don't feel so alone. Because I will tell you, I'm the only person in my house who deals with these fucking things. Okay, so, all right, we're getting towards the end here. Real quick, let me update you on some things that I've been watching on TV and seeing at the movies and some musical experiences I've had. We'll just rip through these real fast because I realize we're at over an hour at this point. And I'm starting to get tired, to be honest with you all. You know, you try fucking talking for an hour straight to nobody. You know, when I had a co-host, at least a co-host could fucking talk sometimes, but now I'm all alone. It's just me. So I get more tired more quickly. All right. All right. TV. I finished the series Widow's Bay on Apple TV. And we talked about this before. That's like a Stephen King-ish kind of horror, dark comedy thing. And, you know, it didn't finish the strongest, but I thought it was good enough and it was enjoyable and I would actually recommend it to you. Movies I've seen recently in the theater, I saw Disclosure Day. Speaking of paranormal stuff and aliens and UAP, right? That's a movie by Steven Spielberg that deals with the whole UAP phenomenon, specifically how the government and private companies have been keeping the truth about UAP and non-human intelligences secret from all of us. I believe that to be the case. And I will probably do an episode on that in the future. Unsurprisingly, an element of the phenomenon relates to consciousness. We talked about that a little bit earlier in the episode, right? So I thought this was an excellent movie, especially the last third of it. And I will not give you any spoilers, but I highly recommend it. Disclosure Day by Steven Spielberg. Last movie I have seen recently was Toy Story 5. I just saw that one. I thought that was very good as well. That movie is sort of a commentary on how children have sort of lost what those of us, like myself, who are in Gen X, think of as traditional play, and instead are becoming enticed by devices and phones and no longer know how to play. And it's a sweet story because it doesn't, you know, it obviously anthropomorphizes the digital devices, but it doesn't demonize them, right? And it weaves a fairly heartwarming story about how one can have the best of both worlds in terms of digital devices, social media platforms, and preserve traditional play. And it, it makes the point, and I think it's a good one, that children cannot be allowed unfettered access to these things because they don't know any better. And parents need to step in and help out and help structure play for kids. And, there were some things about the movie I didn't like. There were some elements of the movie that I thought were totally unnecessary. But I don't want to give you any spoilers about those things. But I would overall recommend the movie to you. So I overall recommend Toy Story 5. And yes, in case you're wondering, I did cry. I cried several times during Toy Story 5. Ugly crying, sobbing. I can't help it. I am an empathetic person. I care about others. I'm a crier. Okay? And last but not least, Stomping Jen and I went to go see a concert in Boston, which is a long drive for me. It's over 70 miles. A week ago after recording this, I think. I don't remember. Maybe it was 2 weeks ago. But we saw a concert by this Spanish artist named Rosalia, who, people keep getting mad at me for saying this, but she's sort of like a Spanish Bjork, if you know who Bjork is. But she's much more interesting than Bjork in my mind. Rosalia, she sings in 12 different languages, has this incredibly artistic stage show, these very 4 distinct set pieces that are telling a story, an amazing fucking voice, and it was one of the best concerts I have ever seen. And I will say it was the loudest fucking concert I've ever been to. It was even louder than the Wu-Tang Clan, which before I saw Rosalia was the loudest concert I've ever been to. So, Rosalia, great job. Great fucking job. I loved every bit of it. Okay, folks, that's the show. We've reached the end. Now, before I say goodbye to you in my very special way that you all have come accustomed to me saying goodbye to you in, I want to ask you to do something. If you're not following the podcast, okay, please do so on Facebook, Instagram, Blue Sky, Twitter, TikTok. I don't care what platform you follow us on, okay? Or me. I threw the gauntlet down. This is no longer us. This is me. This is Soft Serve Podcast, Absolute Zero Podcast, whatever the fuck you want to call it, with Sawtooth Frank. Okay? So follow me on Facebook, Instagram, Blue Sky, Twitter, TikTok, Substack. I got it all. We got it all, people. Okay? Send me feedback. Send me questions. You can do that through DMs, through any of the social media platforms. You can send me an email, softservepodcast@gmail.com. I have a contact form on my website. You can do it there. Okay? And that's it. I'll see you again in 2 weeks. I don't know what the next show is going to be about. I really don't. I'm going to walk away from this one and wonder, what do I do? Is it going to be ghosts? Is it going to be UFOs? Is it going to be werewolves? Is it going to be something? I don't fucking know. It will be something. The next show will be something. It will be about something. This isn't the Seinfeld podcast where it's about nothing. It's about something. What that something is, I don't know from week to week, but I will figure it out. I promise. I mean, from 2 weeks to 2 weeks. I promise you, I will figure it out. I will come up with a topic. Okay? And if you want me to do a specific topic, let me know. I did do one on demand once. A friend of mine dared me to do a podcast about apples. Do you remember my friend Vape Ape? He appeared on some early episodes of the podcast. Well, he said I should do a podcast about apples. So I said, okay. And I did a podcast about apples, a whole one. Remember? Okay. That's it. I'm going on and on. I've got diarrhea of the mouth again, and I need to stop. Okay? So, I want to say to you all, thank you for listening, and we'll see you again in 2 weeks, and, bye now.
This world of ours, ever growing smaller, must avoid becoming a community of dreadful fear and hate. Those who have freedom will understand also its heavy responsibility. That all who are insensitive to the needs of others will learn charity, and that the sources, scourges of poverty, disease, and ignorance will be made disappear from the earth. And that in the goodness of time, all peoples will come to live together in a peace guaranteed by the binding force of mutual respect and love. I shall never cease to do what little I can to help the world advance along that road.